Archie's TV laugh out. It's a buster. Sabrina tells Harvey to stay away from Hilda today because she has a head cold. Gee, too bad she can't just drink a potion or read out a spell to cure it. Harvey's surprisingly smart enough to agree to not go in the house, and Sabrina says she'll get her bowling ball and be right back. She considerately asks Hilda if she's feeling better, and Hilda wastes my time whining with this problem that a witch probably wouldn't have. Then some kids suddenly show up and ask Harvey to blow up their beach ball. I'm forced to assume neither of them have the lung capacity to do it themselves. Hilda says the pressure in her head is so bad that she feels like it's gonna explode. So this builds up to a punchline where, when Harvey makes a banging sound, she freaks out and somehow believes that her head exploded, even though she's clearly still alive. That was dumb. But it's making me smile so much to see her say, "My head exploded!" with huge emphasized text. Harvey says it was the beach ball he blew up, and says that cold really affected her brain. It really did. Sabrina begs Hilda not to zap Harvey, and reminds her that she even gave her her witch's honor on that. But if bad is good with witches somehow, wouldn't the witch's honor mean nothing? Hilda says a promise is a promise, but in spite of that, without even any lampshading of the fact that she's breaking the promise, she wastes a huge amount of panels casting a spell, which causes Harvey to throw his back, throwing the very first ball. This story wasted a lot of panels on padding because it had too little to its story. Hilda has a head cold, which you'd think an omnipotent witch would be able to cure. It leads up to an amusing joke where she freaks out over Harvey bursting a beach ball, and she casts a spell for an overly long time. That was it? Since when does Hilda need all those candles around her in a circle to cast a spell? I guess that was the joke, that she did something so menacing and stereotypical and elaborate, and that's all that happened to him. Archie's Joke Book 248. Sabrina sees a lumberjack cut down a tree. I guess she was on a walk home from school? Who knows why she's here? She says she can't stand to see trees get cut down and casts a spell to undo it, and writes that down as her good deed of the day, when she should know that the lumberjack would just cut it down again. Even if she warped him away, he'd come back. Even if she turned him into a statue, there'd be another one coming there. But I like that she cared about trees. Archie's TV Laugh Out issue 62. After Hilda complains that being at the beach isn't fun because it's crowded with mortals, which makes me wonder if I read this story before because I've already seen Hilda complain about the beach in the 70s comic. She's reminded that she's not allowed to use magic here and acts like she'll keep that promise. She thinks that woman who just left forgot her purse and wants to go catch her. Because apparently, the same woman who hated that she was at a beach crowded with mortals and wanted to zap up an alligator to scare them, doesn't want a mortal to leave her purse behind. I would say it should have been Sabrina, but this is more interesting. A woman thinks that somebody stole her purse. Hilda thinks that a guy with long hair is a lady and says that he forgot the purse. He acts mean to her, saying that she's trying to be cute, when he should know that it's not her fault she thought he was a girl with a hairstyle like that. Luckily, he says he doesn't own the purse instead of accepting it to steal from it. For some bizarre reason, when Hilda asks whose purse it is, the owners of the purse right behind her didn't hear her say this, and didn't figure out what was actually going on. So the conflict is forced because these characters were arbitrarily written to have selective hearing. Yeah, this is a bad story. They want to find a police officer, so naturally she's upset and threatens to turn him into a toad so that he can crawl back under his rock. The officer shows up and she says she can explain. It was confusing that in the very next panel he says to stay out of trouble, so apparently she did get a chance to explain and he believed her. So why is he talking like she's a troublemaker? There should have been a text box there to say after a few minutes. Sabrina complains that everyone's staring at them, which makes sense, since she just said that she should have turned them into frogs. So she warps her and Sabrina to a kiddie pool in the woods right in front of everyone. This story was about Hilda trying to return someone's purse and getting framed as the one who stole it. Thankfully, the police officer believes her explanation, but it was unsatisfying that it cut past it, and he was still suspicious of her, and that she didn't want to be at the beach anymore. So that was a depressing story. I guess it was trying to punish her for wanting to turn them into alligators, but she just said that. She didn't do it. Archie's TV Laugh Out, issue 63. Harvey finds a lamp in the trash outside, and for no apparent reason, he wonders if it's an antique that's worth a few bucks. So he wants to give it to Sabrina. Hilda, despite being a witch, is still level-headed enough to see a lamp and assume it's just a dirty old gravy server and not a genie's lamp. She makes fun of Harvey as cheap by sarcastically saying he's a big spender. Harvey compares it to a lamp from the Arabian Nights and wants to polish it up, because she wouldn't be laughing at him if it turned out to be a real genie's lamp. I like that it wasn't, and Hilda casting a spell is the only reason it summoned a genie, because that's more believable than what I expected. Also, the genie is a beautiful lady dressed nothing like a genie, which is surprising, but makes sense because Hilda wants to break up its bad relationship with Sabrina. So for once I get to see what it'd be like if there was a pretty female genie. It's pretty easy to think about what he'd want from her. So there isn't much creative to get out of this, but it's worth doing once. He lampshades her appearance and says she's a knockout, and he tells her to go back into the lamp and surprise Hilda. Then he tells Sabrina to hurry over here. She tells him that she has to break off their rock concert date because she has a babysitting job. She really likes the challenge. She really wants to feel like she earns her money, to feel more satisfied with what she buys, when she could just zap up some gold. Harvey wastes a bunch of time telling Sabrina the truth instead of simply rubbing it right away, so an entire page is boring because it's just telling me what I already know. At first I assumed that Hilda would cast a spell so that the genie wouldn't be summoned the next time he rubbed the lamp, and so she'd make him look like a liar, and Sabrina would be mad at him. Sabrina's smart enough to assume that Hilda is up to her old tricks because she gets told that the genie is a pretty girl. Harvey somehow assumes it's smart to tell his girlfriend that he's gonna get the genie to go to the concert with him, and calls her sweetie before she's come out of the lamp. So Sabrina uses magic to make the genie look horrible, and Harvey throws the lamp away wanting to have his eyes checked. He could have easily assumed instead that the genie looks different or is a different genie every time the lamp gets rubbed, because genies are already magical to begin with. This story is about Hilda using magic to make an old gravy server that Harvey found in the trash spawn a genie lady that he wants to take out on a date. Right away I remembered the story in the 70s comic where Harvey found a lamp in the dumpster and thought it would have a genie. And Sabrina eventually made a genie show up. I'm glad it wasn't the exact same plot. And Hilda being needed to make the genie show up is more believable than it being a real genie lamp. But there's no reason Harvey would tell Sabrina that the genie's a pretty lady he wants to date. Why did he even tell her about the genie at all? He'd just keep it to himself. Instead he's written to be an idiot and doesn't even get to use any wishes. And Sabrina makes the genie ugly. But he could have just asked to get the genie to look the way she did before. But then Sabrina would cast a spell again, so he'd use up all of his wishes. Maybe that should have been the ending, but that would take longer. Archie's Joke Book Magazine, issue 252. Completely randomly, Sabrina gets told by a talking frog that he's really a handsome prince who needs her to kiss him to turn him back to normal. She kisses him, and he turns into what looks like a human, but is apparently an ugly troll. Then he says cleverly that he's gonna insult the mean witch again to become a frog again, because this is the only way he can get pretty girls to kiss him. That's a clever page. It wasn't likely that Sabrina would find a talking frog here on Earth that used to be a troll though. It'd make more sense if the evil witch was Hilda, and the troll was here because he came to one of Hilda's parties with other realm people. Archie's Joke Book 255. Ambrose is surprised that Sabrina has the opera on TV, and apparently Harvey wanted it on because he enjoys it, surprisingly. Ambrose says that Hilda was wrong about Harvey being an idiot, arbitrarily, and wants to have Hilda apologize.
But Sabrina saves him the time by saying that won't be necessary because the way the singer's Adam's apple bops up and down makes him giggle. That doesn't make him an idiot, it just means he's more easily amused, which is an advantage he has over most people who don't get to enjoy their lives as much. Sure, it makes a bit of a fool out of him, but still. Ambrose was an idiot too for assuming that everyone who likes opera is smart.
Archie's TV Laugh Out issue 64. In terms of news stories, issue 64 only has a Sabrina silly single in it. In Witch Hitch, Sabrina sees that her high school football team's losing and uses magic to make the football disappear, which just confuses Hilda. Archie's TV Laugh Out issue 65. Sabrina wants Hilda to get ready for the school's PTA meeting tonight. Relatably, Hilda doesn't care and wants to stay home and read. Sabrina wants her to meet her teachers, even though she dresses like a witch and has the personality she has. She really just wants her to meet them because that's what other people's parents do. Relatably, Hilda can't stand stuffy teachers who think they know everything and bore her. She wants her to meet her classmates' parents, and Hilda thinks they would be snobby too. And it makes sense that she would think that, because a lot of people would make fun of her for her witch outfit. So they would be seen as snobs, so she would expect them to be the same way. Sabrina doesn't give up and pulls her up the stairs instead of simply warping her. She says she filled the tub for her, acting like a mother, and eventually zaps her into the bath to give her a bath. It's amusing seeing her say, "Let's get your clothes on," while Hilda says, "You don't listen." Surprisingly, when Hilda says a team of horses couldn't take her to school, Sabrina summons a skateboard below her shoe instead. That would be less conspicuous. And it turns out she has the wrong day and the PTA meeting is tomorrow night. The story ends with Hilda saying she's not going tomorrow night either, in the desperate hope that Sabrina will listen, even though she's got magic. It's pretty admirable compared to the animated series. Sabrina's brave enough to take charge and use magic to force her aunt all the way to her school, and she gets away with it. I'd expect a witch to be that powerful. This story was about Sabrina wanting to get Hilda to a PTA meeting, when it turns out it's tomorrow night. And Hilda was pretty relatable in not wanting to go. The funniest part of the story was when she started acting like her mother. Archie's TV Laugh Out issue 66. Harvey offers to get Sabrina a pizza and gets warned that Tony's closes early today. Who knows why? So he runs out of the house in a hurry and causes Hilda to fall over. He clearly doesn't care or he'd stop, which makes sense because she always mistreats him, and that's what would happen if he stopped. And he'd notice running into her because he'd feel and hear it. Sabrina asks her if she's alright and tells her she'll get her a cup of tea. Harvey remembers that he left his wallet on the TV table. Let me guess, he'll run into Hilda again. She says she's starting to get some feeling back into her legs, and then it happens again. Harvey acts like it never happened, and then runs out of the house again because he's in a hurry. This never would have happened if she was dating a warlock, because then she could just teleport Tony's pizza to her, or warp to right in front of it from the sofa. Sabrina stops Hilda from going after him for revenge, and is smart enough to teleport some stuff to her like a football helmet to make her feel more secure. Of course, she creates knight's armor instead, because she's old-fashioned. And when Harvey opens the door on her, she can't get off the wall, and Sabrina tells Harvey to get a crowbar. So at least he gets a little comeuppance for being annoying, because he has to do that instead of eat right away. This story is about Harvey running to Hilda more than once because he's in a hurry to get to the pizza restaurant before it closes. It's predictable. Hilda gets some slapstick without doing anything in this story to deserve it, and Sabrina's considerate to her. But at least Harvey gets a little comeuppance afterwards. Archie's TV Laugh Out issue 76. Sabrina isn't happy to see a guy she thinks is a big gruesome Hulk named Thurman, of all things. And Harvey says he's famously stupid right in front of him. And somehow, Thurman doesn't respond to what was said in front of him. Instead, he proves he's an idiot by thinking that he's not wasting his time telling Sabrina to dump Harvey for him. He threatens Harvey, But for no reason, he doesn't immediately get punished by Sabrina's magic for that, which is out of character. Instead, he tells them to be quiet because he somehow noticed a bird and aims his slingshot at it. I guess he pulled it out of his pocket. The bird flies away and he shoves Harvey, blaming him for it. Why didn't Sabrina use magic on him already? She can erase memories. Then, for absolutely no reason, he merely threatens Harvey that next time he'll get hit and then walks away, when he was dead set on hitting him earlier and it just made him mad. This story's making no sense. Sabrina tells Harvey not to do anything stupid because he's too dangerous for him. Harvey says he'll have to go home and change anyways because his shirt's dirty now. Sabrina doesn't simply use magic to get rid of the stain and then erase his memory. Instead, she lets him leave so that she'll have an excuse to approach the bully herself. She tells him that he should be ashamed for picking on the smallest opponents. Then out of nowhere, Thurman screams and says he wants to catch a ladybug and brags about wanting to crush it. Sabrina says he won't get to, insulting him, and I assume her being a lady is why he didn't attack her for saving it. Then he wants to run the cat up a tree for being dumb. He succeeds, and Sabrina lampshades that enough is enough. The writer didn't need this much comic space to justify her using magic against him. We already hated him from the second panel. But I suppose it makes sense, because rather than her just making him fall over, she outright shrinks him, which could have gotten him killed. He screams at seeing the ladybug, but it's not bigger than him, so it's not as satisfying as it could be. Then he runs because of a bird, and says that if that's an eye, imagine how big the rest of the animal must be. He screams at seeing the cat, and Sabrina tells all three of the creatures not to bother him anymore, since he passed out and should be able to see their point of view now. So she brainwashed those creatures into merely scaring him. I still don't think it's believable that this would cause him to talk to ants like they're old friends from now on. She said in her spell that he'll eat some humble pie once he's become the little guy. So the only logical explanation is that he was forced to be like this after fainting, as a part of the spell. May in that context could also mean will. This story spent a long time establishing a tough guy that reminded me of Moose right away as a bully, to try to make it look like he deserved Sabrina shrinking him. That was to scare him into being nice to the little guy. The only reason they had to make a new character was that Moose is already dating Midge, so he wouldn't have tried to hit on Sabrina. And being shrunken wouldn't cause him to be nice to little things, it'd just scare him.